14th of November 2021.
I really can't see a way out of this. Can you help me?
You walk into the office and you're like, something's wrong with my balls.
Just move around the testicle.
From news.com.au.
I'm Andrew Bucklow, and I've got news for you. Have you noticed a lot of men are rocking some very seedy moustaches at the moment? So if you're wondering why all the dodgy facial hair, well, it's not because porn moustaches are back in fashion. They're not, thank God. It's actually all because of Movember. Now, if you haven't heard of it, it's a movement which encourages men to grow moustaches for the month of November to help raise money and awareness for men's health issues such as testicular cancer and depression. So we're going to do a Movember-themed episode today. We're going to meet a former AFL player who quit the game and his $1 million a year contract so he could focus on his mental health. We'll meet a cancer survivor who'll reveal what it was like to have a testicle removed and why he chose not to get a prosthetic replacement. And because I'm such a trooper, I'm going to drop my DAX in front of a doctor who will teach me how to check my own testicles.
Yeah.
This is a full service. You're taking my pants off for me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
This podcast contains discussions around mental health. If you or someone you know needs support, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Tom Boyd was an AFL superstar. He started his career with the GWS Giants before signing with the Western Bulldogs, who he helped guide to a premiership in 2016.
Boyd took the advantage and played on from inside the centre square. Boyd's kicked a goal. Boyd's kicked a goal.
He had fame and fortune, but behind the scenes, Tom Boyd was struggling with depression. In 2019, when he was just 23 years old, he decided to turn his back on his $1 million a year contract and walk away from the game for good. Thanks for taking the time to chat, Tom.
It's fantastic to be here with the world opening up, and Movember upon us. It's a wonderful time of year, and it's really good to be with you here today.
Well, you mentioned Movember. That's why we're chatting to you. So I want to go back to when you first realised you were struggling with your mental health. When was that?
It's a good question, and it's not a linear thing. I mean, my first issues were something that most people go through, which is real issues with sleep, and that happened in my first season up in Sydney with the GWS Giants. And, initially it was, I couldn't get to sleep. I'd spend an hour and then sometimes a couple of hours often. And then it just sort of continued to get worse until it was taking me, 3 or 4 hours to get to sleep every night with sort of the racing thoughts and uncertainty and just discomfort that I was experiencing. And then coupling that with, an extensive training schedule and the hardest and most physically exerting training schedule that I'd been as a first-year AFL player, I started to get really fatigued. And what I'd lost was this sort of ability to concentrate first, then it was the ability to connect with others, then it began to be, the ability to feel joy in things was really diminished. And a lot of it was predicated on just being so tired all the time. But it also pushed me away from connecting with my teammates, as I just didn't feel comfortable socially anymore. And this had really not been a concern for me at all until this point in my life. And I think from there, that was really the initial stages that ended up sort of escalating probably 3 or 4 years down the line.
I think the hardest thing to do is to admit that you are struggling. When did you decide to seek help for the first time, and how did you do it?
I don't know if there's a specific moment other than the really significant one that happened in 2017 when I was playing with the Western Bulldogs. And I'd had and I often remark that, this is a situation where I was quite lucky being an AFL player and having psychological support around me. But I'd originally struck up a relationship with my psychologist, or the club psychologist, Lisa Stevens, based around mindset, to be honest. It was all about performance. It was about goal-kicking routine. But as that sort of relationship went on, it began to start sort of addressing more difficult and more serious things. And then in 2017, I got to the stage where I basically hadn't slept in weeks.
Wow.
I was having panic attacks. I was having really big issues with depression and anxiety. And it got to the stage where I honestly didn't know what was going to happen next. I didn't know where my life was going to turn. And that's probably the moment where I finally said to Lisa, and picked up the phone in particular and said, hey, I need a hand here. I'm not sure what is going to happen. I don't know where I'm going to go next, and I really can't see a way out of this. Can you help me? And I think that was, probably the most important phone call that I've ever made in my life. And obviously I was only 22 years old at the time.
You mentioned you were having dark thoughts. Like, are we talking really dark thoughts here?
I try not to get too much into the specific things that I was facing. I think the real feeling of being trapped is probably the overwhelming one. And I think that is something that so many young people, and obviously Movember tackles a lot of the men's component of it, young men really struggle with, which is I don't feel good, or I'm worried about this, or I'm stressed about that, whether that be a physical or a mental problem, and I don't know what to do about it, and I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I think that feeling over long periods of time can be really, really challenging to deal with. And for me, I was sort of stuck between, hey, I'm getting paid $1 million a year to play football, but I feel horrible about myself, and I'm getting so much pressure from external sources and my own internal pressure. What am I going to do? Like, where's the next step, and where's the pressure release valve going to come from? And I think that really was the epitome of some of my struggles, at least at that point in time in my life.
So you were diagnosed in 2017. You were still with the Bulldogs at the time. I'm wondering, did you open up to your teammates about your mental health issues, or were you a bit, worried about that and tried to keep it private?
So it was a pretty interesting turn of events. I mean, I think players were aware of the stuff that I was going through, but it wasn't something that I'd spoken about greatly until I actually took time away. And once that happened, the players were so unbelievably supportive in particular. And I think that's probably determined, at least in a small part, by the fact that we're a young and very close-knit group coming off the back of that premiership in 2016. But the thing that people always ask me or have asked me in the past is like, oh, was it difficult, or did you feel, you're so brave or something like that? And the way I try and describe it to people is that it really was none of those things for me. The thing that it really was when it came to the point of actually telling people was that I might as well have had a broken arm or a dislocated shoulder like I'd had the year before, because I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't, train and play the way I wanted to because I was getting injured and I was getting sick. All of the things that sort of made me a professional athlete were on the decline because of my sleep issues primarily, but also just the sheer amount of stress that was placed on my body through my mental health issues. So it wasn't difficult to describe to them that, hey, I'm just not capable of doing my job right now. I need to fix this, or I need to get on top of this. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to play my role within the team anyway. And that's certainly what was the driving factor by actually taking time off and addressing those issues at such a significant period of time in my career.
In 2019, you were just 23 years old. You decided to walk away from AFL. You retired. Was that a hard decision to make?
Funnily enough, no, not at that stage. So I'd still had 2.5 years and a couple of $1 million left on my contract, but that really sort of paled in insignificance against the fact that, I got to this stage where I'd been injured for quite some time with a sort of chronic back issue, which comes from my mum's side of the family, funnily enough. So she may be to blame. But I also had just gotten to this stage where I didn't have any appetite to play football anymore. And it's such a brutal game. It requires 110% of your mental and physical capacity, and to overcome what is mostly a challenging sport with a few sprinklings of joy and triumph in it, you really need to have your heart in it. And I remember I was sitting in the car park of Victoria University about to go into a night lecture for a class probably that was like entrepreneurship or management or something. I promise you I wasn't excited. And I realized that I was more excited to walk into that class than I had been to walk into the football club for a long period of time. And so, like I had some years earlier, in 2017, I did the same thing. I picked up the phone and I sort of articulated to Lisa that I didn't want to play the game anymore. And, within the week, I basically hung up the boots and moved on.
And what have you been up to since retiring?
It's a good question. Many things. Experiencing the world of COVID like everyone else has, I suppose. It's funny. I do a few things. I've been working, quite heavily in the advocacy space for quite some time, and obviously that's had its challenges given the face-to-face restrictions we've faced in the last couple of years. But in a way, that sort of was a catalyst for a couple of other projects that I've gotten off the ground since. I've basically finished writing my book, which will come out next year, which is really exciting. I've been able to work with a company called Everperform, which works with human performance and specifically focuses on well-being, relationships, and productivity. I'm also lucky enough to have a baby on the way early next year with my fiance. So,
congrats!
My plate is pretty full.
And how do you keep your mental health in check now?
I still see Lisa once a week, or I'll see is an operative term. I still talk to Lisa once a week over the phone, which is really important for me. And look, the way I try and describe it to people is I don't need Lisa for mental health all the time anymore. But it's good to have someone in your corner who intimately understands your life but is kind of detached from it, which is basically like a coach. And that's certainly the conversations that I have with her primarily. Exercise is a big one. Every morning I get up and I either run or walk. It's just a good way to start the day. And really just sort of having enough things in my life to sort of connect me to the ground. It's community, it's people, it's family, it's my job. And my ability to obviously do the work that I'm really passionate about that sort of drives my productivity, one, but also obviously my joy and happiness as well.
You're a big part of Movember. You're one of the ambassadors. Why are you so passionate about that cause?
I actually started just down the road from where I grew up in Ringwood. So it came out of Donvale, and it's the 18th year, I believe, this year of Movember, which is just incredible to think about, because when I finished school in 2013, there was no talk of, proactive mental health support or well-being. It was really just, there's some people who have mental illness and there's some people who don't. And to think about the work that they've been able to do, and might I add that timing-wise, it couldn't be better. We've just come off the back of two extraordinarily challenging years where only one thing has been spoken about really, and that's been obviously the pandemic, with good reason. It's been so challenging for everyone. But, those other health issues, be them physical health or mental health, haven't gone away. In some ways they've been exacerbated by the challenges of COVID, and to have Movember as we're opening up to reinforce how important it is to check in on yourself and check in on your mates is just so aligned with the things that I talk about, and I'm blessed to be a part of the team again this year.
So if anyone's listening right now and they're struggling with their mental health, what is your main piece of advice to them?
Don't do it alone. It's really not worth it. And I speak from experience to tell you that, it didn't work for me. It hasn't worked for so many young people and people more broadly over the years. So whether you want to get professional help by going to see your GP and accessing a first aid program, accessing a psychologist, even talking to a friend. I mean, really talking to anyone is better than no one and better than suffering in silence. And whatever you can do to access that support, please do, because it really is worthwhile and it can be life-changing.
Last question, Tom. Do you ever just think about the money you missed out on and go, oh, damn, that would have been nice?
Sometimes. Yeah, sure. I mean, so my first thought process goes, wow, I'd love to have that for a renovation of the house. And then second, my thought goes, yeah, but then I would have had to play footy for another 2.5 years, which I certainly didn't want to do. And I have no regrets about leaving the game. So, we all make decisions in life, and I certainly made the right one at that point. And I don't regret it at all.
Matt Whitehead is the entertainment editor from Network 10, who you might know from this show.
Welcome to The Bachelor TLDR, the show that'll catch you up on everything you missed about The Bachelor.
Now, Matt, in 2017, you noticed there was something wrong downstairs. What were your symptoms at first?
It was just kind of a regular day. I woke up and noticed a size disparity between my balls, like quite significant.
Right.
And did nothing about it. I just kind of ignored it and hoped it would go away. But it obviously didn't. And then after a few weeks, I actually noticed a slight discomfort just kind of up in my groin, like the upper bit.
Yeah.
So that was when I was like, I should probably get this checked out.
All right. So you went to the doctor, and what happened during that initial consultation?
It's, you walk into the office and you're like, hey, I have something's wrong with my balls. And he was like, oh, great. But there were a few things. Obviously, I did the WebMD thing and tried to check it out myself. And there were a few different things that it could have been, but I kind of assumed the worst. But the doctor was obviously skirting around the issue that it was most likely testicular cancer. So he just kind of had a look and then basically immediately referred me to get an ultrasound.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you went to get an ultrasound. What happens when, you're getting that done?
I think that was probably the most humiliating point of my life. Well, it's just, you're laying there, you've got, because it is your testicles, they kind of construct this towel system where that's the only thing that's kind of visible.
Mm-hmm.
So you're holding these towels down and they're just kind of like having a little look and you're just laying there trying not to make eye contact with anyone. But it was pretty amazing that from my doctor's appointment to my referral to get an ultrasound, it was like less than 24 hours. They have a look, they send the results back to the doctor. You're just kind of expecting the worst. Also, they give you the ultrasound. So obviously I took it out at home and I was like, well, like, time to diagnose myself. Like I've seen Grey's Anatomy. Couldn't figure out what it was. But so then was basically right back at the doctor and he then, to be honest, I can't actually remember my GP ever saying the word cancer, but he basically referred me to an oncologist pretty immediately.
Right.
So a specialist that deals with testicular cancer. And then I had an appointment with him and it was pretty much go, go, go. So from the moment that I got that referral, it was pretty much 5 days from somebody saying, yeah, you've got cancer to me waking up from surgery. It was 5 days.
That moment where you get told in a roundabout terms that you have cancer, do you remember what that was like?
Yeah, I think the most difficult part was actually telling my parents.
Right. So you called them on the phone?
Yeah. It was a really weird mix because in a way I felt like I was disappointing them, which sounds psychotic to say out loud. But, it was just kind of like, sorry, but here's like another drama. And obviously they were just really worried for me. And I was like, I'm so sorry, but I've got some really bad news, which is it's a weird way to start a phone call. And there was a moment where I was like, are they going to think I'm kidding? But, like my family are amazing and I'm really lucky there as well. But that was probably the hardest thing.
And what about before you go in for the surgery, they tell you that you have to get a testicle removed. Do they talk about options to get a replacement at the time?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things that they really flag when removing a testicle. And that's sort of like, if you do want to freeze your sperm, I think it's not common, but occasionally it can change your sperm count. And if you do want a prosthetic, and I said no to both. Okay. I always said that it was kind of like, I don't know. I just don't know if it's necessary to have this like, what is it? It's like it's purely cosmetic.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit vain almost, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's sort of like, what am I going to do with it? You know what I mean?
And also it's kind of unique just to have one.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has noticed.
Really?
Yeah.
Does that mean you haven't picked up since, or is that?
It's been a lot. It's a slow couple of years. I mean, yeah, nobody notices, and I just thought it was weird.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the surgery. What was that like?
They put me under a great anesthetic. I woke up. It was the Survivor finale. The day that I woke up, I asked who won, and then I went back to sleep. It was very easy.
And was it hard to, kind of reconcile with the fact that you had testicular cancer and you survived it? Did that mess with your head a little bit?
Yes. Great question. Yes. I think I currently exist in this kind of in-between space of like survivor's guilt and imposter syndrome.
Okay.
I think because my whole experience, obviously I had the tumor for a lot longer because I did wait around, which is not something that I should have done. But from the kind of day that it was named to the moment that I woke up out of surgery, it was 5 days. And I think when people typically speak about cancer, they speak about it being this like really weighty thing. And it is. And so many people go through so much hardship and they have to really fight. And I didn't experience that. And that to me is a really strange kind of friction where I don't feel like I can really say like, I'm a cancer survivor. I'm just kind of like, I had a ball removed. Like it's odd.
Yeah, I get that. And I guess what's your advice to other men who are listening to this, who have a problem downstairs and are perhaps nervous or embarrassed to go and get it checked out? What would you say to them?
I think my advice is to just go. The biggest risk that I faced was that I was really on the cusp of things progressing to a worse stage. So they pretty much got it just in time, where I didn't need to go to radiotherapy or anything like that. And it was really my own head where I felt embarrassed to go and have those conversations with the doctor, and he didn't care. And I don't think, he's thought about it ever since. But it really is just feeling like you can have those conversations. And I think that's what I really learnt afterwards, is that the more that I speak candidly about my experiences, the more comfortable other people are, having conversations with me about it. And sometimes anytime I'll post about it, I'll get messages from people saying, hey, sorry, but, can I ask you different things about your symptoms or your experiences because I'm having this or this? And obviously my advice is always, I would just go see your GP or, just get it checked out. But it is, feeling like you can have those conversations.
So after chatting to Matt, I realised that I wasn't entirely sure how to check my own balls or even what I was meant to be looking for. So, because it's Movember and because I'm a very serious investigative podcaster, I'm not really, I decided to pay a visit to Dr. Gordon ONeill, a urologist from St Vincent's Clinic in Sydney. Dr. Gordon, thank you so much for fitting me into your busy schedule.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so quick question. How often should men check their testicles?
Well, whilst testicular cancer is pretty rare, like we're talking about in the general population, up maybe 1 in 10,000, 1 in 5,000. But even though it's quite rare, it's important to do regular checks. And the best way I've found to advise my patients is just to check yourself in the shower. When you're having a shower with some soap every 3 months, just checking for any lumps that might be developing in the testicle itself.
Is that because in the shower they tend to hang a little bit looser, don't they?
They do, with the hot water and things. So it just gets into a bit of a routine. I think men are pretty used to washing themselves down there anyway, but just giving them a little bit of a squeeze and checking for any hard lumps which may be developing. And if you feel something like that, then you should go straight to your GP, who can organise an ultrasound.
Well, it's been a few hours today since I've had a shower, so mine, I feel like they're up in my stomach at the moment, but I guess if I can get you to teach me how to do it, and we'll use me as a test crash dummy and we'll see what happens.
We can do that.
Just lie down?
Yeah, so just lie down. Just lie down on your back there.
Okay. Fun times. The things you do for podcasting, huh?
Yeah.
That's a full service. You're taking my pants off for me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so look, the first thing I do when I'm examining you, and you can do the same thing yourself in the shower, is just to gently just pull down on the testicle, just so it frees up a little bit.
Okay,
just
pull it down.
Rub your hands around and just move around the testicle. Just let it sort of move in and out of your fingers. And if there's a hard lump, you'll feel it because you're used to yourself.
Yep.
And it only takes a couple of seconds to do that, and then just move over to the other side and just pull it down a little bit. Just roll the testicle in between your fingers and just give it a little bit of a squeeze, and you'll be aware of any hard lumps which may be developing.
Oh, that's so easy.
It's a snack.
Oh, well, thank you for doing that, and I'm sorry that you had to see everything you saw today.
It's a pleasure. It's part of the job.